You are welcome to leave, Edward, but let us be completely honest with each other. Nobody is going to hire a 54-year-old manager who peaked a decade ago. Julian Montgomery did not just say those words to me in private. He said them at exactly 5 o'clock on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, standing at the head of the polished mahogany conference table in the main glass boardroom of Atlas Logistics Solutions. He said them in front of 8 junior managers, all of whom were under 28, and all of whom immediately stared down at their tablet screens to avoid making eye contact with me. My name is Edward Mercer. For 21 years, my title had been Director of Systems Operations. I had earned every single letter of that title through 75-hour work weeks, missed family holidays, and more than 2 decades of keeping this company's massive supply chain running without a single major disruption. 4 minutes earlier, I had calmly walked into the room and placed a single sheet of crisp white paper on the table. It was my formal written resignation, providing a standard 2 weeks' notice. I did not raise my voice, nor did I make a dramatic scene. I simply stated that due to recent structural changes, my time at Atlas had come to a natural end. Julian did not pick up the paper to read it professionally. Instead, he picked it up with 2 fingers, held it in the air like a dirty napkin, and laughed out loud. "Is this a joke, Edward?" he asked, looking around the room for approval. The junior managers offered small, nervous giggles. "You make $195,000 a year. Do you know how many fresh graduates off the street could run your division for $90,000? Your legacy systems are outdated. You are replaceable inventory. Plain and simple." He dropped the paper back onto the glossy wood. The slap of the paper against the table sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. I stood completely motionless. My hands were at my sides, unclenched and relaxed. My face was a mask of total composure. Inside, my blood was boiling. But 2 decades in corporate operations had taught me one fundamental rule. The moment you lose your temper, you lose your power. I let him speak. I let him show everyone in that room exactly who he was. Julian leaned forward, putting his weight on his hands. He was 34 years old, wore a tailored suit paid for by his family money, and possessed an elite business school degree that had taught him plenty of corporate buzzwords, but not a single thing about how real cargo moves across real oceans. His father sat on our board of directors, which was the only reason he held the title of senior vice president. "I will tell you what I am going to do," Julian said, sliding the resignation letter back across the long table toward me. "I am going to leave this letter right here. I will give you until sunrise tomorrow morning to take it back. Sleep on it, Edward. Think about your mortgage. Think about your age. If you walk out that door tonight and do not apologize by 6 o'clock in the morning, you are done. No severance, no references, nothing." He turned back to his screen, dismissing me as if I were a piece of trash. I picked up my paper, folded it neatly in half, and walked out of the room without saying another word. As I walked back to my office down the quiet, carpeted hallway of the 5th floor, the heavy silence of the building settled around me, but my mind was incredibly active. Julian thought I was an overpaid relic clinging to a dying desk job. He saw a middle-aged man who wore simple, off-the-rack suits, spoke softly, and did not make flashy, animated presentations during quarterly board meetings. To Julian and the new breed of executives, value was measured in corporate buzzwords and colorful slide decks, not in the gritty, unseen labor that keeps a global supply chain moving. What Julian failed to realize was that I did not just work for Atlas Logistics Solutions. I was the person who kept it alive, day in and day out. For more than 2 decades, I had been the operational anchor of this company. I had survived corporate restructuring, economic downturns, and 4 different chief executives. I knew every port terminal, every customs broker, and every legal loophole across 6 regional ports. I had built the entire digital foundation of their logistics network. I knew that without my direct involvement, the entire apparatus was nothing but a fragile house of cards waiting for a gust of wind. I remembered when I first walked into this office 21 years ago. The floors were linoleum, the computers were bulky, and the company was handling only a fraction of the cargo it processed today. I had spent my nights writing code, my weekends talking to port authorities, and my holidays resolving customs disputes that threatened to bankrupt us. I had sacrificed my youth, my personal life, and my peace of mind to build this operational empire. Julian's father, Richard, had recognized my value back then, offering me bonuses and stock options that kept me loyal. But Richard had grown distant, sitting on a remote board of directors, leaving his arrogant son to play landlord over an empire he did not build. As I looked around my office at the certificates on the wall and the manuals on the shelf, I felt no regret. I had given this place my best, and now I was going to give them my absence. Over 21 years, I had built the company's core supply chain engine from the ground up. We called it Customs Core. It was an internal software architecture that routed over $550 million in daily freight through 6 major regional ports. Every cargo ship arriving from overseas, every tractor trailer idling at a border terminal, and every automated customs declaration relied on Customs Core to clear legal inspections. To an outsider like Julian, the system looked completely automatic. You pressed a button on a fancy screen and green check marks appeared. But software is only as good as the reality behind it. International shipping laws change constantly. Port authorities update their safety rules without warning. To keep $550 million moving every single day without getting hit by millions in federal fines, I had personally created custom administrative fail-safe protocols. These protocols were not written in any standard instruction manual. They relied on special security validation keys that were tied directly to my personal executive security profile. Whenever a port system threw a high-level error code at 2 o'clock in the morning, Customs Core did not run an automated script. It pinged my personal terminal, requiring my specific administrative authority to verify the cargo manifests and clear the hold. I was the invisible backbone of the entire firm. I worked 60 hours a week, every week for nearly 2 decades. While young executives like Julian took credit for our rising profit margins during public shareholder calls, I was the one sitting in dark computer rooms making sure our ships were not impounded by coastal border guards. I did not work these grueling hours out of blind corporate loyalty. I did it because I had no choice. I am the sole provider for my family. My daughter Lily is 23 and living with a complex chronic health condition that requires specialized medical treatments not fully covered by basic insurance. My mother Clara lives in a quiet, high-quality assisted living facility 4 miles from my house, where the monthly care fees rise every single year. For years, my salary of $195,000 was the only wall standing between my family and complete financial disaster. Lily had been diagnosed 5 years ago with a rare autoimmune disorder that required weekly specialized infusions, treatments that cost more than $4,000 a session and were only partially covered by my insurance. My mother Clara, now 80 years old, required 24-hour nursing care after a severe fall, and the monthly fees at her assisted living facility had recently risen to $6,000 a month. These financial pressures were the invisible chains that kept me chained to my desk, enduring the constant disrespect. Julian knew about my family situation. In his eyes, these obligations were not a source of strength, but a vulnerability he could exploit to keep me compliant. He believed that no matter how much he diminished my role or cut my team's budget, I would never dare to walk away because I could not afford to lose my paycheck. The corporate arrogance that had just exploded in our main glass boardroom had been building for 7 painful months. It all started when Julian Montgomery was appointed Senior Vice President of Operations. His father, Richard Montgomery, was a major shareholder who sat on the board of directors and had pushed the promotion through, despite Julian having less than 5 years of real experience in the shipping industry. Julian had arrived at Atlas Logistics Solutions with a shiny business school degree, a rack of expensive custom suits, and a desperate burning need to prove that he was a modern corporate visionary. He did not spend his first month learning how our regional port network actually functioned. He did not sit with the seasoned logistics coordinators, nor did he read our complex regulatory compliance manuals. Instead, he announced a sweeping plan to modernize our entire operations structure and cut overhead costs by 25% across the board. Julian's idea of modernization was entirely cosmetic. He hired high-priced outside technology consultants who spent weeks building flashy, colorful digital dashboards that looked incredible in board presentations but were functionally useless for resolving real-world shipping crises. To fund these visual upgrades, Julian systematically dismantled my operations department. He stripped me of my budget authority, slashed my team's overtime pay, and forced experienced systems engineers to resign. He then reassigned my two remaining senior programmers to build an experimental portal for his favored protege, Toby, a 24-year-old analyst, who did not know the difference between a basic bill of lading and a customs duty waiver. When I submitted detailed written memos warning Julian that cutting our system's budget would leave our 6 ports vulnerable to major border clearance failures, he did not even read them. In weekly staff meetings, he openly cut me off whenever I brought up operational compliance, smiling condescendingly at the other managers and telling them that I was stuck in the past, or that legacy managers always fear dynamic innovation. What Julian never understood was that a man who has spent 21 years solving catastrophic supply chain crises under pressure does not panic when threatened. He plans. And as I sat down at my desk to look at my screen one last time, I knew that the very system Julian dismissed as outdated was about to show him exactly what my absence looked like. The breaking point arrived 4 weeks before my resignation. A massive regulatory update was issued by international maritime authorities regarding real-time manifest verification. It required a custom code patch in Customs Core to keep our 6 major ocean terminals synchronized. I flagged the regulatory danger immediately and requested emergency developer hours to push the safety update through the network. Julian refused the request on the spot. He accused me of trying to inflate my department's budget to justify my salary. He canceled our scheduled maintenance window and assigned his protege, Toby, to handle the compliance paperwork using an unverified third-party software trial. To make matters worse, during my annual performance review that Friday, Julian gave me the lowest rating of my 21-year career, citing my supposed resistance to modern executive strategy. 2 days later, at the quarterly operational briefing, Julian presented a massive cost efficiency report to the regional directors. Every single positive metric in that report was built on the back of my team's grueling, unpaid weekend labor. Julian took full credit for the numbers, publicly thanking Toby while ignoring me entirely as I sat at the far end of the long conference table. Looking at Julian standing there, basking in applause he did not earn, something fundamental shifted inside me. I realized that my loyalty to Atlas Logistics Solutions was no longer a virtue. It was a form of slow self-destruction. I had spent more than 2 decades protecting a company that allowed an arrogant, inexperienced executive to treat institutional knowledge as an obstacle. Julian believed he was untouchable because of his father's name and board seat. He believed the company ran on slick slide decks and executive buzzwords. I decided right then that it was time to let him discover what actually held the building up. I walked back into my corner office, closed the door quietly, and pulled a clean cardboard box out from beneath my desk. The building was almost completely empty now. It was 5:45 p.m., and the pale evening light filtered through the rain-streaked windows, casting long shadows across my workspace. I packed my personal items with slow, deliberate precision. A small framed photograph of my daughter Lily at her high school graduation, a brass desk clock given to me for my 15-year milestone, a small potted fern that had survived 9 years on my windowsill. I did not print out proprietary files, nor did I download trade secrets onto a flash drive. I had no interest in corporate theft or petty sabotage. The power I held did not belong to a stolen document. It resided entirely inside my head, built over 21 years of solving operational problems no one else even knew existed. At 6:05 p.m., as I taped the box shut, my door swung open. Julian was standing in the doorway, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up in a calculated display of busy executive power. He looked at the box, then at me, an amused smirk playing on his lips. He walked over to my desk, pulled my folded resignation letter from his pocket, and slid it across the clean wooden surface. "Last chance, Edward," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Sign a full retraction right now. Accept a 20% pay adjustment to align with our new operational structure, and I will let you keep your desk." If you carry that box past the security desk, your corporate access will be revoked immediately. Your pension matching stops tonight. And I will personally make sure your name is flagged across every logistics recruitment network in the state." I looked down at the paper, then looked up into his eyes. I felt no fear, and I felt no panic. The 21 years of anxiety, the weight of keeping this company afloat while being treated as invisible, simply vanished. It was replaced by a cold, quiet clarity. "You are making a massive administrative mistake, Julian," I said calmly. He snorted, throwing his head back in a short, mocking laugh. "Is that a threat, Edward?" "No," I replied softly, placing my hands on top of my cardboard box. "It is an operational fact. Reality always arrives much faster than you expect." I did not wait for his response. I picked up my box, walked past him into the hallway, and headed toward the glass elevators. He called out after me, his voice echoing off the empty corridor walls, telling me I would be begging for my job back before the week was over. I did not look back. Down in the main lobby, the security guard, a kind man named Walter, who had worked the front desk for 14 years, looked at my box with wide, worried eyes. I handed him my corporate identity badge and master security key card. He swallowed hard, asking if I was sure about this. I gave him a gentle smile, thanked him for his years of kindness, and stepped out through the automatic doors into the cool, rainy evening air. Walter looked at the cardboard box in my arms, his face falling as he realized what it meant. "You too, Edward?" he asked quietly. I nodded, offering a sad smile. "It is time, Walter. This place is not what it used to be." Walter sighed, sliding my key card across the counter. "They are letting the good ones go," he muttered. I shook his hand, thanking him for the 14 years of security and warm greetings he had provided every morning. As I walked out into the cool evening, the rain felt clean against my face. It was the first time in 2 decades that I did not feel the crushing weight of Atlas Logistics on my shoulders. At 6:15 p.m., I sat in my sedan in the quiet corner of the parking lot. Rain tapped rhythmically against the windshield as I opened my tablet. First, I officially revoked my personal executive consultant guarantees, the legal safety agreement permitting Customs Corps to use my private digital signature for emergency clearance overrides. Second, I unlinked my phone from the Atlas Enterprise server. The sudden silence was overwhelming. For 21 years, my phone had buzzed every 20 minutes with terminal alerts. Now the screen was blank. I drove to a diner 2 miles away, parked, and dialed a private number I had kept for 4 years. It was time to call Victoria Vance, Chief Executive Officer of Apex Freight Systems, Atlas's primary competitor. Apex was Atlas's primary and most aggressive market competitor. For 4 long years, Apex had been trying to match our cross-border clearance speeds, but they had never been able to match our turnaround times at the 6 regional ports, because they lacked the custom protocols I had designed. By 11 o'clock that evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea. Victoria picked up on the second ring. "Edward." Her voice came through clear and sharp. "I did not expect to see your name at 11 on a Tuesday night." "Good evening, Victoria," I said calmly. "As of 6:15 this evening, I am no longer employed by Atlas Logistics. My resignation is effective immediately, and I have fully severed my technical ties." There was a sudden pause. "Are you telling me Julian Montgomery actually let you walk?" "He mocked my resignation, called me replaceable, and threatened to ruin my reputation if I did not apologize by sunrise." Victoria let out a long, incredulous whistle. The absolute arrogance of that young man is staggering. He has no idea what he just threw away. "I want to be transparent, Victoria," I added. "I am not calling to sell Atlas's client lists or trade secrets. That is not how I operate." "Of course not," Victoria replied. "I do not need their files, Edward. I need your mind, your compliance record, and your 2 decades of direct relationships with port directors. You are the actual engine behind their success." While we spoke, my tablet chimed with an automated industry notification. Customs Corps had just thrown a critical Level 4 authentication error at the main container terminal. Because my personal digital signature had been revoked, the system could not verify the cargo manifests for 3 incoming ocean freighters. Julian had assumed the system ran on autopilot, unaware that every night it required my key validation to clear cargo. Victoria saw the same alert and chuckled. "They are already stalling, aren't they?" "He will figure it out soon enough," I replied. "Edward, Victoria said. What about your non-compete clause? I smiled into the dark room. When Julian restructured our operational salary packages 3 months ago to cut costs, his father's legal team made a critical error. They failed to include standard non-compete restrictions in the new templates, which superseded all previous agreements. I am completely free to work anywhere. Victoria laughed. That is poetic justice. I want you in my office at 5:30 tomorrow morning. Let us draft a contract before the sun comes up. At 5:30 a.m., I pulled into the parking garage at Apex headquarters. The glass tower gleamed in the gray dawn. I rode the elevator to the top floor where Victoria was waiting. The reception area was open, bright, and humming with energy. Even at this early hour, a stark contrast to the sterile, tense atmosphere Julian had established at Atlas. A pot of fresh coffee sat on her glass desk alongside the legal agreement prepared by Apex's head of legal affairs over the past 5 hours. Victoria offered me a chair and pushed the document across the desk. Read it carefully, Edward. I reviewed the terms. The contract appointed me Senior Vice President of Global Logistics Operations. The base salary was $320,000 a year, nearly double my Atlas salary. It included a substantial signing bonus, full health coverage covering Lily's specialized care, and performance bonuses tied to terminal efficiency. Most importantly, it granted me full, unchallengeable authority over regional compliance and systems architecture, allowing me to build a new network without corporate interference. Victoria viewed my experience not as an outdated relic, but as a vital asset. This is very generous, I said. It is what your work has been worth for the last 10 years, she replied. At precisely 6 o'clock a.m., as the sun cleared the horizon, I signed the contract. Instantly, Apex's media team pushed a press release to every corporate newswire. At that exact second, my phone began vibrating. There were 11 missed calls, 6 text messages, and 4 urgent voicemails, all from Julian. His first text message, sent at 5:15 a.m., had been arrogant, demanding my return. His second text at 5:35 a.m. was panicked, asking where the administrative bypass keys were for the error at Port Terminal 4. His final message, sent just 2 minutes ago at 5:56 a.m., consisted of only 3 words: "Please call me." The smug power Julian had displayed 21 hours ago had evaporated, replaced by the panic of an executive, realizing he had cut the ropes holding up his own ceiling. I set the phone face down and took a sip of coffee. The sun had risen. My decision was made. By 8 o'clock in the morning, the situation at Atlas Logistics Solutions had spiraled into total operational chaos. Without my manual administrative key validations, Customs Corps had locked down every freight channel. 52 massive ocean container ships were anchored offshore, unable to dock because their manifest clearance signatures were missing. More than 600 transport trucks were backed up along the highway, idling in bumper-to-bumper traffic that stretched for miles. Port authorities were imposing automated, non-compliance fines of $65,000 for every hour each terminal remained blocked. Inside Atlas's headquarters, Julian Montgomery had called an emergency meeting. The room was packed with frantic managers, and the flashy digital dashboards Julian had installed were flashing red error banners. When Julian demanded that Toby bypass the security locks, the young analyst broke down in tears, admitting that no one understood the source code of Customs Corps or how to bypass my personal authorization keys. Desperate, Julian tried to force his way into the database using my old administrative profile, attempting to forge my digital authorization signature to clear a stalled cargo freighter. But the security protocol was robust. It flagged the unauthorized attempt, recorded the forensic log, and triggered an automated alert to the board of directors, noting a severe breach of fiduciary duty and a violation of federal computer security regulations under Title 18 of the United States Code Section 1030. At 8:15 a.m., my phone rang. The call came directly from the Atlas boardroom speakerphone. Sitting in my spacious new office at Apex Freight Systems, I placed it on speakerphone, with Victoria Vance sitting across from me. "Edward, thank God you picked up!" Julian's voice blasted through the speaker, breathless and high with sheer desperation. "We have a massive technical glitch in Customs Corps. I need you to give my tech team the master administrative override codes right now." "Good morning, Julian," I said calmly. "That is not a glitch. That is the security architecture doing precisely what I designed it to do when an unauthorized user attempts to process global cargo manifests without valid credentials or attempts to forge those credentials. Listen to me, Edward, Julian stammered. I know we had a disagreement. If you come back right now, I will honor your old contract and give you a 10% raise, but you need to give us those codes, I replied, my voice steady and completely devoid of anger. You told me yesterday that I was replaceable inventory and that anyone off the street could run my division for half my salary. If my work is as simple and worthless as you claimed, surely your modern technology team can resolve a simple clearance code. Edward, please, Julian was begging now. The board is calling me every 5 minutes, and my father is online too. If these terminals stay closed, the company faces catastrophic damages. My institutional knowledge belonged to me, Julian, I replied softly. You chose to discard it and disrespect 21 years of my life. As of 6 o'clock this morning, I am officially the Senior Vice President of Global Logistics Operations at Apex Freight Systems. I no longer work for you, and I owe you nothing. Julian went completely silent for 5 full seconds, absorbing the news. Apex, he whispered. You went to our competitor. Reality always arrives faster than you expect, Julian, I said, repeating the exact words I had spoken to him the night before. And by the way, 3 of Atlas's largest commercial accounts have just officially canceled their contracts due to the port delays, transferring their entire shipping portfolio to Apex. Have a good day. I pressed the red button and ended the call. 3 months after that morning, the dust finally settled, leaving the balance of corporate power completely transformed. The single morning of port blockages cost Atlas over $18 million in direct penalties, delayed cargo fees, and legal settlements. Over the next 6 weeks, nearly 35% of Atlas's core corporate accounts, clients who had stayed with the firm solely because of my compliance record, transferred their business directly to Apex. When the board launched an internal audit, the truth came out. The audit exposed Julian's incompetence, his mistreatment of staff, and his desperate, illegal attempt to forge my digital signature. This forgery, which violated California Penal Code Section 470, constituted a clear breach of fiduciary duty. The board stripped Julian of his title, demoting him to a desk job as a junior regional coordinator in a small, remote branch office thousands of miles away, barred from ever speaking to the board. Today, I sit in my spacious executive suite at Apex, looking out over the city skyline where cargo ships move smoothly. My new role pays me nearly double, but the money is only a small part of my peace. My daughter Lily is receiving the best medical treatment available, fully covered by my executive care package, and her health has stabilized dramatically. My mother Clara lives comfortably in her residence without me ever having to worry about rising monthly fees. My new team at Apex treats my 21 years of experience as a priceless foundation of knowledge. When I walk down the hallways here, people listen. Looking back on that Tuesday afternoon in the glass boardroom, I do not feel bitterness toward Julian. His arrogance was the greatest gift he could have given me, forcing me to realize what I was truly worth. Real competence never needs to raise its voice or rely on a family name to prove its authority. Real skill shows its value in the quiet, seamless motion of things working properly. And sometimes the most powerful response you can ever give to someone who disrespects your value is simply to step back, fold your hands, and let them experience the true exact cost of your absence.